Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 152. Yes, we're still climbing up that ladder to wherever we're going to, but we've made it to 152. I'm grateful to everyone who tunes in every week to listen to our guest or our guests to find out what he or she has to say. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, that's the other way you can watch this podcast. Please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. That you can also be kept updated about what we are doing at the Hare Krishna Project that way as well. As you know, we don't just produce podcasts; we also do book distribution, school visits, Hare Krishna festivals, all those wonderful activities. Okay, episode 152. One of the things I love about this podcast, and I say this often, is that we get to travel virtually all over the world. Um, and I realized today that we're on a bit of a roll at the moment. The last couple of the last several guests have been women, which is fantastic. It's great to interview a wide range of guests. And this week, we're going back to India. I haven't been to India for ages. I am long overdue a visit. I am absolutely delighted to welcome our guest this week. It's Anu. Hare Krishna, Anu.
Hare Krishna.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And I'm pleased that, because there's a bit of a time difference, that we've managed to schedule this recording. Okay, Anu, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. It's a very important conversation that we're going to have. The first question is the nice, easy question that every guest gets. Please tell us a little bit about you and where you are from.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here. It's my pleasure to be a part of this podcast. My name is Anu Pandey, and I am a counseling psychologist based in Greater Noida, India. I also have a background in engineering. I have done agricultural engineering, bachelor's in agriculture engineering, and master's in geotechnical engineering. I had been teaching as an assistant professor in engineering colleges in civil engineering departments. I taught for about 5 years. Then I became stay-at-home mom, and that is when I started reading books and researching about things. And as a child, I always had this curiosity to know about people, why people behave the way they behave, why they think the way they think, why they feel the way they feel. So I was always very curious about human psychology, human behavior, human cognition, but I never thought about it as for taking it as a profession. I always dreamt of becoming something doctor or engineer, which is very common in India. You see, you have only two choices: either you become a doctor or an engineer. That are the two most preferred professions by Indian parents. So obviously, earlier I was thinking of medicals, then I couldn't go get through it. So I went for engineering, and I became an engineering, and I was working, and I was okay. It's not that I was very happy with that profession, but I was okay. But when I became a stay-at-home mom, that is when I started reading books and lots of articles over the internet. That is when my interest in psychology developed. And I always wanted to uh, do something for people. And this, when I started psychology, studying about it unofficially, that is when I realized maybe if I go ahead and do some degree, get some academic knowledge like basics in psychology, maybe it will be better for me to understand people in a much better way, or the things that I was reading in a much better way. So I went for this graduation in psychology, and right in the second year of the graduation I felt that I need to go for masters as well. And while I was doing my master's, I felt like, no, I want to change my profession and I want to become a psychologist. So that's how I became a psychologist. And now I have left that engineering background completely. And I'm doing a lot of things related to psychology, human behavior. I'm providing counseling since a few months, creating content on YouTube and Instagram. Also, I have two websites where I write about issues related to family dysfunction, narcissism, all kinds of abuse, like spiritual abuse, domestic abuse, childhood abuse, interpersonal issues, family dysfunction, mental health, and how they are related to each other. Also, I have a book on narcissism, understanding narcissistic abuse in intimate relationships. That's my first self-help book. I have academic books also, two books in market, and that's it. That's all about me. And
Oh,
I'm
well,
very
thank.
thankful.
So,
I'm also very
sorry, what were you going
thankful.
to say?
I'm saying that over the years, after reading so much about human behavior, human psychology, I developed this passion to know more and more about them and to be able to do something to help people. So all the things that I'm doing, content creation, writing blogs, writing book, all the counseling services I'm providing, I am aiming everything to help people, especially to people who are going through some sort of abuse, because people who are going through abuse, they have a lot of mental health issues that they are not aware of. And also, there are a kind of abuse that maybe we may discuss later in this podcast, that there are kinds of abuse like psychological abuse, which is very difficult to prove, which is very difficult to detect, not only by the outsider, but also by the person who is going through it. I personally know a lot of people who are going through abusive, who are in abusive relationships, who are under immense stress because of the abuse in the relationships that they are in, all kinds of relationships, but they are not aware. And since they are not aware, so they will never seek any help, they will never take stand for themselves. So I want to be that one person who will go ahead and create awareness, so that people will know what they are going through or what their loved ones are going through, so that they can be helped and they can get out of that miserable lives. So this is the motivation that has driven me to do all the things that I'm doing right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and that's a great introduction. I feel like you've summarized the whole podcast in like 3 minutes, which is fantastic. So in terms of your upbringing, you said that you're from or you live just outside of New Delhi or an outer heart of New Delhi, did you say?
I was born in Sitapur. It's a place very far from Delhi. I was raised in Amethi, which in another city. I did my college in Allahabad, another city. I did my first job in Delhi. Then I was in Noida for 1 year. Then I was in Greater Noida. So I've been to all over Uttar
Yeah.
Pradesh of India.
And in terms of your upbringing, did you have like a religious upbringing? Uh,
Actually, in India, I belong to a Brahmin family, and in Brahmin families, we are naturally very religious. Both my grandparents from my side, from my husband's side, were very highly religious. Also, my mother is very highly religious. She is initiated. My maternal grandfather, he was a sannyasi, he was a monk. So, in Brahmin families, it's a natural things. And yes, I was also my mother conditioned me from a very young age to do all kinds of austerities and do fasting and all. As a child, I didn't like doing all that because I didn't know why I was doing it. Even she was not aware why she was doing all that. She was told by her parents. Her parents were very spiritual. My maternal grandparents, they were very spiritual. They would go to these places and they will stay and they will serve devotees for months and do a lot of charities and all. So my mother was raised in that kind of atmosphere. My father was not that much, but my mother was like that. She's still that. So yes, I had been conditioned to, it was a part of my routine. Even when I was a child or teenager, even when I was in college, I was living in hostel. I used to observe fasts and all. But I'd never read any scriptures. This thing, reading scriptures and all, and chanting and all, that is what I started after associating with my community, my religious community. But yes, I was. into these things since my childhood.
So that kind of leads us nicely on to the next question in terms of your link or your links with the Krishna consciousness community, the Gaudiya Vaishnav Bhakti Yoga community. Tell us a bit about that. The Hare Krishna movement. How did you were you raised within the movement, or and how did that link happen?
Actually, it's been only 10 years since I got associated with the community. My husband had two colleagues who were already member of the congregation, and our Greater Noida congregation is very new. It's only, I think, 12 or 13 years old. So at that time, everybody was, trying to get as many followers as they could. So there were two colleagues, my husband's colleague, who would tell my husband to bring family along, but I was reluctant. I didn't know what ISKCON was, what they were doing there. I just didn't felt like going. So I would initially say no, I don't want to go. But my husband insisted me several times, and he tried to show me what are the benefits that I will get if I go there. So I said, okay, if he's saying so many times, he has said, I'll go and see. So I went and tried to attend one, two programs. Love Feast program I attended once. Then there was this Jagannath Rath Yatra, local Jagannath Yatra in our city. I attended that one. And then when I went to Bhakti Raksha program, that is when my actual interest started to develop, because that was the first time I was getting opportunity to read scriptures, and that was really fascinating because I had always been a very curious person. I had a lot of question why this is happening, and I already told you about human behavior, cognition, and emotions and all, and why people are living this miserable life, why people are sad, why so many people are mad at me. What can be done about this? Even though I had been very nice to a lot of people, but not everyone had been nice to me. So obviously, I had questions why these things are happening, why people are like this. So my queries were partially addressed in those Bhakti Raksha classes. First thing is that I got to know why people have miseries in life, because the law of karma, I got to know about that. I had always been spending a lot of time doing all kinds of rituals, but I didn't know who God is. I had been praying to all demigods and doing all kinds of austerity, but I didn't know the essence of Bhagavad Gita. I didn't know that Krishna is God. But when I went there and I got the opportunity to read scriptures, not just to read them, but to discuss them and to answer them. So it was very attractive to me, because I wanted something like that, but I didn't know that it existed. So I found it very attractive. And apart from that, after getting married and having kids, I had lost all my social life, and I was living in isolation, a lot of isolation. I lost touch with most of my friends and wasn't getting time for talking to people, hanging out with people. I was very lonely at that time. And when you go and join a new community, you get a lot of love and attention and admiration and acceptance, and who wouldn't like that? And people wanted to be around you. They wanted you to invite them. They invited you. People were ready to help you, to be there for you. They wanted to call you. They wanted to talk to you. It was wonderful. I was getting everything that I didn't even ask for, so it was very attractive. And moreover, um, I felt that we all feel when we get associated with the community that maybe I am some fortunate person, and a lot of things. Your spiritual thirst, it's getting quenched there, and a lot of things you get there. So I was very happy, and I thought this is the way, and I had to walk this path. So I chose this, and within few years I got initiated as well. So that all about my journey.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. And you made a comment about feeling valued and appreciated and welcomed, and everybody wants to talk to you and everybody wants to spend time with you. I'm not a psychologist, but I think it's called love bombing. That's the term that I've heard when you join a group and it's like it's called love bombing. Bombing. Everybody wants to spend time with you and get to know you. And I mean, people have different views on love bombing. But yeah, I just thought of the term love bombing as you were. I was also love bombed many years ago, but that was a long time ago. Okay. So you have a special, as you've already alluded, you have a special interest in mental health abuse and supporting people through mental health difficulties. Why is that? And what kind of support do you provide?
As I have already mentioned, that I had always desire to understand people in the best way I could and to do something for them. As a child, I always wished if I had a magic wand that I could use to take away miseries from everyone that was around me. It really, I can really feel the pain when I see someone in pain, and especially if someone is going through that I have been through or my loved one has been through. And unfortunately, there are people very who are very close in relationship to with me, or very close friends who I have seen in very miserable conditions. And I always wanted to have some magical power or something so that I can do something for them. I had been wishing this since I was a child. But when I grew up and become an adult, that is when I realized magic does not exist. And then I would just pray for them, and I felt that maybe if I do something, at least I can be nice to these people around me. So I tried to do that, but I realized that just by being nice to someone, or just by letting everyone cross your boundaries, and just by burning yourself, you cannot take away miseries of people. There is something else that you need to know. You need to know why this is happening and how this is happening. So I got the answer of my why in my spiritual community. And now I wanted to know how it happens, the dynamics, how it manifests. That is what I learned in psychology. So um, my I too have had mental health issues and relationship issues with people, and I have as I said, that very people very close to me have been through very traumatic have faced traumatic events in their lives. So my desire to improve myself so that I can pour from a full cup to my children, to my husband, to my loved ones, and also I can help them, because in India there is huge lack of awareness on mental health and also on abuse. Because I must not say this, but abuse of children is a norm here. At least verbal abuse is very normalized. If there is someone who says that children must not be abused, then they will be, people will laugh at them. This is not abuse. This is disciplining. And if you go to families, lower class families, lower middle class families, women are also not treated very nicely. And I have belonged to I come from a low middle class family, and my grandparents were from lower class families. I have seen all that happening around me. So the pain of my loved ones, the pain that I have because of my loved ones, as a psychologist, I know when someone has trauma, how it affects the way they see the world, how they see themselves and everything around them. They see everything through the filter of trauma. And there is this book by Dr. Vander Kolk, Body Keeps the Score. It's completely on trauma, and I have read that book. In that book, I have read that most of the problems that we see around us, it's also my observation, relationship problems, behavioral issues, dysfunction in thinking, behavior, emotional issues, relationship issues, the abuse that people are causing on other people, the underlying reason for all these problems is trauma. And trauma could come from a lot of things that people are not aware of. People think that if someone gets through an accident or gets kidnapped, that's trauma. But trauma is not what happens. Trauma is not the event. It's what happens inside you. The change it changes that the event, traumatic event, brings in your brain, in your nervous system, in your body, how it gets stored in your body, how it affects the functioning of your brain, the neurobiology of your brain, the working of your nervous system, and because of that, how you start to see the world, how your worldview changes, how your beliefs change, how you develop new beliefs that are dysfunctional. This is the reason for all miseries of life. This is my personal observation. So we have miseries because of karma. That's what I learned in spiritual community. And how these miseries manifest is because of trauma. So if we could do something, and especially in India, there is so much lack of awareness. People uh, don't want to talk about these things. I've been creating content since a very long time, but I have very few people, very few Indians as my followers because they don't just get it. Abuse, dysfunctional behavior, dysfunctional thinking has been so much normalized in our society that people don't want to go beyond it. So that's why I think maybe if I dedicate my life and everything that I'm doing, if I align everything to this mission, maybe if I'll be able to help a few people in this world, maybe I'll be able to make some change in their life. So that's all about it.
That sounds wonderful, actually, that you want to actually make a change and help people. That actually feels really, really encouraging. So thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate it. So one of the reasons I really wanted to interview you for this podcast is because I've looked at your social media channels and they're very impressive. And I can see that you do specialize in recognizing narcissistic abuse in spiritual organizations. Very interesting. So could you tell us what is narcissism? Because a lot of people won't know. So what is narcissism, and what is narcissistic abuse?
Narcissism is a pattern of behavior which manifests in two forms, either in the form of traits or in the form of personality disorders. Personality disorder is something when someone's behavior, thought, and feelings and everything is so affected that the dysfunctionality is ingrained in their personality, and it's very difficult to cure them. So there are 10 types of personality disorder, and out of the 10, one is narcissistic personality disorder. So, in the diagnostic statistic manual, there are 9 symptoms, and if someone has at least 5 of them, they will be diagnosed to be having NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. But the thing is that people who have this disorder, they rarely go and get diagnosed. So, we cannot call someone as having NPD, the disorder, but anyone who shows the traits, the pattern of behavior, the narcissistic pattern of behavior is said to be a narcissistic person. So, how it is characterized? Uh, Narcissistic traits are characterized by things like grandiosity, entitlement, lack of empathy, envying other people and believing that they envy them. They try to dominate other people. They are aggressive. They have a fragile sense of self. Actually, there are 2 types of narcissists: grandiose and vulnerable. The grandiose are very dominating and aggressive and vindictive, and the vulnerable are they may look like they are introverts, and they may not look that they are sad and depressed, but they are actually not. On the inside, all kinds of narcissists are same. They have same in feelings of entitlement, grandiosity. They will exaggerate their accomplishments, their achievements, and their dreams and their interests. They like to be surrounded by followers, and they feel entitled to special treatment. They feel entitled to forgiveness even without asking it, and they lack empathy. This is the core characteristic: lack of empathy. Actually, the thing is that they know what empathy is. They have intellectual. People generally say that narcissists lack empathy, but I would say that narcissistic people, they understand what empathy is because that's what they prey on. They understand what a person is going through, what he or she is feeling, what she needs, what she fears or he fears. And then after getting that knowledge, they will prey on them. They will manipulate them. But on the emotional level, they don't get it. They don't understand what this person is actually feeling. And this is why it's very easy for them to abuse them. So any person who has these traits, the narcissistic traits, if this person abuses someone, this is called as narcissistic abuse. And narcissistic abuse, it has a lot of components: financial abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical violence is also there a lot of times. But the most important component is psychological abuse. They are expert psychological abusers. And also, one very distinct thing about narcissistic people is that they are not always abusive. They are abusive for 80% of the time, and for the 20% of the time, they put all the efforts into making the victim believe that the 80% did not happen. So what happens is that victim gets attached to them. Whenever the victim tries to leave them, they will love bomb them. The love bombing thing that you stated earlier. When someone shows affection only to manipulate a person, and the love is not true, and it's not long lasting, and that's how they and the form of the abuse is mostly psychological, like gaslighting. They will do emotional abuse. They will do give silent treatment if you don't go according to them, and then they will, if you try to leave them, if you try to leave them, and they sense that now she or he has realized that I am abusing this person, and maybe now they will go leave me. So how will I exploit them? Because interpersonal exploitation is one of their important characteristics. So then they will start hovering. If hovering does not work, then they will do love bombing, finally manipulating you and sucking you back in. And once you get sucked in, then again the tension building phase starts. So narcissistic abuse happens in cycle. There are stages of narcissistic abuse: love bombing to hook you, then tension building phase, then abuse. And when the abuse happens, you try to hold them accountable. They may give you silent treatment, or they may sometimes devalue and discard you also if they find another supply, another in case of parent child relationship, parents do this to children if they want to favor other child. In case of intimate relationships, if they find another supply, another partner, they may devalue, discard you. But sometimes they again come and love bomb when they are not getting along with this new supply. They may again come and love bomb. So it's the abuse keeps going on in cycle, and it's so confusing for the victim, because of since the as the relationships goes on and on and on, as the years pass by, there is a shift in the duration of these phases. The tension building phase, the tension building phase and the abusive phase will get longer, and the love bombing phase will get smaller. So after long periods of abuse, you will be love bombed for short duration, which we call as breadcrumbing in psychology, so that you get confused for a while. So I was thinking that this person was abusing me since 3 months, but now today he or she is very nice to me, talking nicely to me, doing everything for the kids and bringing me gifts. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe this is all in my head. This is what the narcissistic person wants you to feel, that it's all in your head. And also, narcissistic people are very charming, and they have this very charming persona that makes that not only confuses the victim but also the outsider, the people who sometimes trying to help the victim. What happens is that narcissistic people have two faces. One face, the vindictive, the aggressive, the dominant, the cruel, that the family knows, the children, the spouse knows. And the other face is that which the community knows, or the society knows, or the strangers knows. You will be amazed to know that narcissistic people are into spiritual communities, doing a lot of spiritual work. They are social workers, philanthropists. Not just this, they are just outside going somewhere, and somebody needs a help. A stranger needs they will jump right there and help them. Sometimes they would leave their, family members, children, spouse, sick at home and go help out some stranger to create a very good impression. This is one very important characteristic of narcissistic people. They have two faces, one that family knows and the other one that strangers know. And strangers have already a very, very good impression of them. This is why. Two reasons. First is psychological manipulation of the victim, and the second one is that they have a very good social image. That's why victims never stand up. They would never take stand for themselves. They are so confused. And on the top of all that, narcissistic people are very expert gaslighters. Gaslighting is a manipulation tactics in which the abuser tries to make the victim feel that abuse did not happen. Whatever you think, you should not think because it's not true. Your perception, your reality, your memories are not true. They are just in your head. You are delusioned. So believe me what I'm telling you about what happened that day, or what you should feel, or what you should think, or what you're seeing right now. They say something else and they behave in the other way. So the victim is in cognitive dissonance. They have two coexisting ideas about the victim, and it's easier to go with the one that the abuser is forcing you to go for, because you have to live with them and you're confused. And over the years living with a narcissistic person, mental health gets deteriorated, self-worth gets deteriorated. You start to doubt yourself, your memories, your perception, your worth, and everything. So victims just do what the abuser says, and they already have a very good social image. Nobody can ever raise a question on them because they're doing so much for everyone around, relatives, neighbors, strangers, everyone in the community. Nobody's going to answer them. So this is how insidious narcissistic abuse is. This is why we seriously need to do something to make people aware. At least the victim should be aware that they are being abused, so that they can do something about it, and so that they can save their mental health. Because as I told earlier, when someone goes through abuse or trauma, they may again become another abuser to other person. For example, a woman who is going through narcissistic abuse in intimate relationship, she will definitely become an abusive mother. She's going through so much trauma, so much confusion, so much depression, hopelessness. And CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is a disorder which is very common in people who are in relationship abuse, like childhood abuse or intimate narcissistic abuse, because domestic abuse. Because when there is ongoing trauma, every day there is a traumatic event happening to you, then you develop complex trauma, which has very complex symptoms that are even very difficult for even the victim to acknowledge and explain to others. So this is all about narcissistic abuse. And rest, if you want to know, you can go to my blogs or read my book or watch my content. I'm always there to tell you more about it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to your social media channels with this podcast so people can see the kind of blogs that you write and the articles that you write online, look at some of your very impressive videos as well. In terms of the next question, you've kind of already answered this in a way, but I want to ask it anyway, and I want to kind of really draw it out. The question is, does narcissistic abuse happen often in religious and spiritual organizations? And if so, why? And is this type of abuse more prevalent in spiritual organizations as opposed to secular organizations, in non-religious groups? Do you find this more often in religious and spiritual groups? Is kind of what I'm saying or what I'm asking.
Narcissistic people love this religious atmosphere. And why? It's because all the narcissistic traits, that they have, they somehow they use it to feed their ego. And there is no better place than a spiritual community which gives you a free pass to, I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything about spiritual communities, or neither I'm saying that all people in spiritual communities are like that. But narcissistic people, they love to be part of spiritual communities. I have read books. I'm not just saying about my community, but I have read books by other authors who have written book on spiritual abuse, Christians, uh, Muslims, and from other faith systems also. I have met people online that have shared their stories with me of how they have been abused by narcissistic people in spiritual communities. What happens is that uh, it's a good thing that narcissistic communities provide you a very good atmosphere to grow spiritually. They have this system. You don't have to do a lot of things actively. You just become a part of the community and do all the things that they tell you to do. Get nice attendance, attend the programs, and bring followers and all kinds of these things. So originally it was all obviously decided, the system was set up in such a way to facilitate the spiritual growth of people, because everybody is busy in material lives. They have jobs, they have family, and also everyone is not very learned with scriptures and all. So we need a system, just like for material education we go to schools. So that's why churches and temples and mosques, they have set up communities where people can come, and we will facilitate the entire process for you. You just have to come and do what we tell you to do. So this is a very nice thing, and I appreciate that. But the problem is that your spiritual growth is equated with your performance. This loophole, this is loved by narcissistic people. They know that if I go to the community and I perform really well for few weeks, and they will start to look at me like I am some great elevated a follower or devotee or something, and it actually does happens. This is the problem. And it's just by performing well, having very high attendance, bringing a lot of followers, acting really nice, and following with all the rules and regulation, when you are, nobody's going to see what they are going when they are leaving the church or leaving the temple, going to home, how they are treating their family members, their servants, or labor class people. Nobody's worried about that. All everybody's worried about is how they are performing inside the community when they are with the community, among the people. And narcissistic people, as I've already told you about their two faces, one is for home and the other one is for outsiders. And that face is really very handsome face, because they do everything to keep it in a very good shape, all kinds of good things for other people. So all the things that are required by a person to do inside spiritual communities, like our community and churches and all, they are very expert in that. So they go ahead, join community, do everything very nicely for few weeks, and the problem is that they are elevated to higher positions. Narcissistic people do not join communities to become better people. They do not do that. You don't need to join a community to have a conscience or to feel empathy for people. You can go to a therapist, or you can just have some self reflection, and you can just start having some empathy for people. You can stop, abusing people. You can stop abusing your family members, immediate family members. That would do. But no, narcissistic people do not actually want to change. They want to go to the leadership positions in the communities. That is the only reason why they join communities. And then once you become a leader in a community, you have this suit of armor that protects you, because now you're hiding behind the sacred walls of trust and faith. Now you have performed really well. You have impressed everyone, your seniors, your people who joined with you, who were on your stage, and your guru and your mentor. Now everybody is seeing how wonderful this person is. So now you gradually, there is hierarchy. Yeah, it's okay. I understand that it's important to have some sort of hierarchy in institutions, communities, for smooth functioning, because you have to take decisions, you have to make committees, you have to give services. For that, it's required. But narcissistic people look it as it's a loophole, and they take advantage of it, and they start to grow very rapidly by doing every material thing that is required. The problem is that spiritual communities do have some sort of criteria for deciding if a person really deserves to be a leader or not, if the person really deserves to be a guru or not, mentor or not. Material qualifications like management skills, giving a lot of time inside the community, bringing a lot of donations, these things, they do not tell a person's actual spiritual growth, because these are material skills that anybody can learn. And moreover, narcissistic people are very focused about their social image, so they put a lot of efforts. I had been reading about this, I had been observing about this, I have talked to people, and everybody says the same. Narcissistic people do all this, and then they get leadership positions, they get the positions of guru, and then the behavior, it never stopped. The behavior at home never stopped. Now the behavior inside the community also starts. And now, since there is one another loophole that you are required to give unquestioned compliance, this gives them this so much power. Now they can say anything, they can do anything, they can manipulate you, they can gaslight you. And I'm not saying that just because there are toxic people, narcissistic people in spiritual communities, so it makes the whole community toxic. But the thing is that if you allow narcissistic people to be part of the community, they are going to everything. Everything is connected inside a community. What I'm doing, then this person is doing, because there is hierarchy, and we have meetings when we exchange thoughts and ideas with each other. If you allow toxic people to be a part of the community, it will gradually destroy the community, and you will not even know. Even the most well-meaning communities have narcissistic people in it, because they are very good at bringing a lot of followers. Every community wants to grow at a very fast speed, and narcissistic people help in that, because they are expert in that. They are expert in going out and manipulating people into bringing them. They may sometimes lie. They may sometimes promise things that actually don't happen in communities. Your material problems will be solved. This will happen. Material problems do not solve when you become a part of a spiritual community. It's for your spiritual growth. For your material problems, you have to deal with them. But narcissistic people, they do not want to deal with their own problems. They do not want to become better than who they are. Plus, but also, they do not want to be held accountable for what they do. So that is why they seek a power position, and power dynamics is there in spiritual community. We all know that. So that is why they feel very attracted, and they come and they join, and very quickly they are elevated to higher positions, and then they can do whatever they want to. So of course, narcissistic people are there in all kinds of spiritual communities, all kind of denominations or religious communities. They are there, and they are undetectable because of that persona, that face that they put on when they are inside the community. But if you go ahead and ask all of them, there will be some victims even inside the community, but they cannot say anything, because inside spiritual communities, you are always told that if you try to question a leader, if you try to question the system, maybe there is something wrong with you. Maybe you're not chanting your rounds properly. Maybe you should focus on your rounds. Maybe you should come for morning programs and all. So sometimes people are able to detect, those who know the patterns are able to detect that, but they cannot say anything, because once you become part of the community, all that love and acceptance and all, after that, you don't want to be suddenly devalued by everyone. You don't want to be seen as someone who is less committed. Nobody wants to be, because your spiritual performance, your spiritual growth is always equated with how materially you are performing. And one of those things is how you are seeing everyone else, and the leaders and the gurus and all. And if you ever raise a question, if you ever have a doubt in your mind, it means you're not doing your things properly, and maybe you should focus on yourself. So nobody speaks about that. Even those who are able to detect it don't say anything about it. Sometimes people who are on equal level, other leaders, don't say anything, because they are I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine, so we will do favors to each other. Everybody wants their position. Narcissistic people are there in spiritual communities, and they are there for position, so that they can abuse that position, abuse that power. And narcissistic people, all that the dysfunctional behavior, the thought and behavioral pattern, it's for feeding their ego. And holding a position in a community gives them the best place to feed their narcissistic ego. And if we talk about this openly, like I have stated a few in this podcast, I have told the characteristic of narcissistic people. So if you closely look in your community, anyone who's watching this podcast, in your community, if you closely look at one of the leaders who says that they have a lot of empathy for people, then that's why they are propagating the message of God and bringing followers and devoting so much extra time in the community and doing so this and that and that. But actually, they do not have empathy. If somebody is sad or going through something, and instead of validating their pain, actually doing something for them, they invalidate their pain or tell them that it's because you are failing somewhere spiritually, or say things that they are hurtful. It means that they are not feeling it here. It means that they do not feel other people's pain. If somebody does not feel other people's pain, obviously they lack empathy. And when someone lacks empathy, they are not good for holding a position like that. First of all, you should have karuna for people around you. If you do not have karuna, everything else does not matter. How much managerial skills you have, what if you are a very good speaker, you are very good kirtanya, you are very good whatever qualities, you material qualities, these are just material qualities. Heroes don't go to kingdom of God. Substance does. If you have substance, if you actually have karuna, why you are bringing followers? Just so that people will say that this person has brought so many followers to hear that, to feed your ego, or you're actually worried about these people that you have brought in the community. If you actually worried about them, you'll first of all do something about your behavior, something about your own behavior, and then you will be actually worried that I have brought so many these many people in the community, and now they should actually get what we have promised them. It's not just that we will have eat and dance and all kinds of functions are happening and people are coming and going. And what is the difference between the spiritual function and a material function? Then they will be same, but people are spending time and coming to community, coming to temple or church or mosque because they want something spiritual. And if you know that you are not being, you will never be able to give them that, because you haven't taken that. You didn't take. There is no fast track to spiritual elevation. If you must take time, but what narcissistic people do is that they do the spiritual bypassing. Instead of going through the process and actually elevating, they bypass it. There is a saying, why fake it till you make it? Narcissistic people would say, why make it when you can keep faking it? So they would keep faking it all their life, because I believe that narcissistic people actually don't believe in God. Anyone who does believes in God has karuna for other living beings. They do have empathy. If you have empathy, then just if you bring just one follower and just help them, it will be enough. If you are bringing millions of followers but you do not have karuna for them, you are actually not worried. You actually don't care about their spiritual growth. All you care about is what people would say about your performance in the terms of number of head counts that you have brought, and what performance your head count is, the head count that you gave, that they are giving. So this is how narcissistic people operate in spiritual communities. Spiritual communities also get benefited by them because obviously they are growing the numbers, bringing the donations, and they are good speakers. Sometimes they are good singers also. So there is mutual benefit, but I think this is wrong. There should be a community or a body that should be taking care of these things. Not see, hospital is meant for sick people. Sick people come to hospital because they need to be cured. So I will say that these people should not be allowed in a community. Of course, they should be, because communities Churches, temple, mosques are hospitals, and people who are coming with low conscience are like patients. But please don't make them doctors. Let them be patients, let them be cured, and there should be at least a few people in every community who should be wise enough to know about these things, to be able to know the difference between someone who is actually spiritually elevated or is just performing. And performance should not be given that value, and performance should not be equated to people's spiritual growth. This is the biggest loophole that narcissistic people take advantage of.
Thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it. And it reminded me of my own studies many years ago at university. I studied new religious movements, or NRMs, which is a fancy term or a more academic term for cults. And as you were talking, I was just thinking how new religious movements or cults are kind of forgive the expression, but are kind of breeding grounds for narcissists, because lots of religious communities are often, not always, often closed off from mainstream society. They allow leaders to make decisions unchecked. They're often quite what's the word? Theocratic. So theocratic means kind of religious rule unchecked. It's a different, it's a kind of opposite to democratic, theocratic, and often religious groups are theocracies. It's a bit of a fancy political word. And I was thinking about how lots of examples that I've heard over the years of narcissistic leaders or narcissistic abusers have been in religious groups. And, I was even thinking of people I know now who could be narcissists, or I think are narcissists, as you were explaining, how you spot a narcissist in terms of their behavior. And I've been in situations where, somebody is really nice for a period of time, then all of a sudden they change and they're very kind of cold towards you. They've got from you what they want, and you're no longer useful to them, or you start to question things. And when we set up the Hare Krishna project here a couple of years ago, we wanted to make sure it was a safe space for any devotees to ask any question they wanted, even if it sounded bizarre. Because one of my experiences of ISKCON and the wider Hare Krishna movement is that it's difficult to ask questions, or if you ask a difficult question, you're kind of shouted at, or you're told that, oh, that's offensive. That's offensive to the guru. And I actually made a funny film about 2 years ago that the Hare Krishnas, they get offended so easily. So they're
Very
the,
true.
it's unbelievable. Just become a bit more thick-skinned. I've never met a group of people that get offended so easily. So I agree. I'm just thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking of so many examples in religious communities. There was an example only about 2 years ago here in Britain of a man who was running a communist cult in London.
Mhm.
I think he's in prison now, but he had all these wives living in his house, and they believed he was Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha all at the same time. And he never let them leave the house. And it was kind of a communist cult in London. So if anyone's wondering, these things happen unfortunately
Yes,
often, and
yes, very
religious communities are hotbeds that allow narcissists to rule without questioning. So yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you're saying. In terms of, because a lot of people will be watching this podcast and listening that will be agreeing with you in terms of, oh yes, I've been a victim of narcissistic abuse in a spiritual organization. And I guess my next question to you is, what advice would you have for them? If they're in a religious organization now, they're experiencing narcissistic abuse, what would your advice to them
if you are being abused by a narcissistic person inside a community, it's not very easy to go ahead and confront them because the aftermath, the the result of that, it could be more harmful for you, because there is so much conditioning. They said that they said we have say that we have material conditioning, but actually inside communities, I say that there is kind of conditioning that everybody, even those who are very well-meaning people, the in leadership position, in other position, who are very well-meaning, who do have empathy, but since they are in a system that has become toxic because of the narcissistic people, so their thought process has also become toxic. Everybody needs everybody wants to look very highly committed. And inside community, if you raise a question on a leader, you are automatically tagged as someone who is less committed to the community, less committed to God or your faith system. And if somebody tries to support you, they too will be labeled the same. So, first of all, do not just go and talk to anyone, because they may again, if you have been abused in any place, in your home, in your community, or anywhere, you have the trauma from the abuse, and now if you go and share it with someone who does not understands what you're going through and invalidates your pain or your experience, or tells you that somehow you are responsible for you went through, then it gives you second wound, which is again which enhances your trauma several folds. So make sure that you do not just share with anyone or go ahead and confront them. If the person is leader, then especially do not go and confront them, but gradually start to distance yourself from this person as much as you can. Physical distance, definitely. Emotional distance also. So from day one, as soon as you realize that you're being abused, start to separate yourself from this person, because if you take out the knife from your wound, your wound may start to heal. So first of all, get yourself physically away from the trigger. Then try to find a person inside the community or outside the community, among your friends or family members, who would understand you. Go ahead and share with them. Just by sharing, sometimes we get clarity of thoughts and we feel better. Then there are therapists who are aware of trauma and abuse, and especially the kind of abuse that you are going through, relationship abuse or spiritual abuse or whatever abuse you are going through. Try to find a therapist who knows about this, who's informed on this issue, and try to get therapy. Try to get in therapy. Emotional abuse or psychological abuse does not leave scars, so people can't see it, even you can't see it, but it can do a lot of harm, especially if you have been abused in spiritual community. It can take away your sense of self, because your sense you did so much emotional investment, everything you invested in your community, and there the problem is that everything that you do, your performance, how you think, how you dress up, how you speak, how you perform, how you do everything, is always equated with your spiritual growth also. So if you start to distance yourself from your immediate leader or your people who are on your level or anyone or from the entire community, it's going to the aftermath is going to be really, really damaging on you. So you need to be in therapy. And if for some reasons, for like financial reasons, it's not possible for you to be in therapy, then there are groups, support groups on Facebook that you can join. You can find a support group that suits you. You can join several groups, and you can go ahead and see the kind of talks that they are happening. You can read posts and comments, and wherever you feel emotionally safe, you can share with them. When you will meet people who are going through that you have been through, then you will feel validated, because the problem is that when you are abused in spiritual community or by some spiritual family member, then no matter how bad they have been, no matter how much damage they have caused to you, you are always going to hold yourself responsible, because there is this inner critic that has been created by the gaslighting of that spiritual abuser, because people who abuse you in spiritual context, they often use scriptures. They weaponize scriptures against you. They will recite verses and phrases to justify what they have done, and to hold you accountable for what you're going through. And you are going, if you try to share anything that happened to you, any misery that you're going through, any pain that you have, you are immediate. If you're unfortunately sharing it with someone who is toxic, narcissistic, and even if they are not toxic or narcissistic, but they are just in a system that is toxic, that has become toxic, they may say things that will give you second wound, just like I said before, by invalidating you. Maybe you should try harder. Maybe you should chant more. Maybe you should try to forgive them. This forced forgiveness, taking, reminding you of your karma, all kinds of these things, they can damage you more. So find someone, find a safe person to share your problems with. It could be a stranger also on a Facebook group that can understand what you're going through. And if possible, get into therapy as soon as you can. And then there are a lot of free resources available over the internet. There are worksheets, workbooks, there are online books, articles, blogs, and then videos. There are wonderful YouTube channels that are completely dedicated to this one. Then, so you can connect with all kinds of people. They may not be, and then while doing this, also you will feel guilty. The guilt and shame, there's going to be profound guilt and shame when you realize that you have been abused spiritually. If you think about what happened, you feel guilty and ashamed for thinking so and so, for the person who was so committed to the community, so doing so many wonderful services. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe it's my karma. Maybe I'm not seeing the things as they were. Maybe everybody is happy with them, it's only me who has problem. Maybe then I am the problem. You are going to have this thought over and over and over. And even when you leave that community, or you distance yourself from the person who abused you in spiritual context, you are going to have all these aftermath, a severe anxiety. You may have intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts is a very common thing in people who have been spiritually abused. You will get this thought over and over and over. Maybe something is wrong with me. It's my karma. I am not, maybe I was not serious. Maybe I was not doing things well. Maybe I'm not committed to God. This thought is going to come over and over. They are still in the community, still attending all the programs, still doing everything so nicely. They are so, because when you joined, initially you were told that you were fortunate for becoming a part of us, for getting our association, for being able to do all of this. Now, abuser is still doing all of that, but you are not. So what you will feel, obviously, you're going to have this intrusive thought, now I am not fortunate. Earlier I was, now I am not. Maybe because I offended them. Maybe because I thought so and so about them in my head. Maybe because I am wrong. Because anyone who is still part of that, who's still doing all of that, was I was initially told that they are fortunate people. So he or she is still fortunate because they're still doing all of that, but I am not being able to that. The thing is that you are not being able to do all of that because they abused you, or one of the person, he or she abused you, and they, or any activities that is happening over there would be triggering for you. That's why you do not want to be with them. You want to be away with them, from them, because you do not want to be further abused. You do not want to be triggered. You do not want to be invalidated. This is the truth. But what you will feel is that maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am not the fortunate one. You have deities at your home. If you are a Christian, you have your Bible at your home. If you are a Muslim, you have your Quran. You can do everything at home. God is everywhere. You do not need to be associated to a group of people or to a person in order to spiritually elevate you. A truly spiritual person, if that was so, Why were they abusive? They wouldn't have been abusive then. They would have been nice people then. And other people, they would have supported you. They would have had empathy. A truly spiritually elevated person has a deep sense of who they are and what they are doing. If you try to understand, you will have, if you have been spiritually abused, you will have two parallel thoughts all the time. This is called as cognitive dissonance in psychology, having two contradictory thoughts at the same time. That person was abusive, they were wrong, they were not spiritually elevated because they abused me or they lack empathy. At the same time, they are fortunate because they are still there, they are still being able to do that, and I am not fortunate because I am not able to do all that I used to do before. Everything that I used to enjoy before has become a trigger now. I can't do anything, any practice. Maybe I have lost my love for God. Maybe God does not loves me as much. So you are going to have all these kinds of thoughts, and it's going to take a toll on your mental health and on other relationships as well. Because when you are not mentally well, when you have trauma, when you have severe anxiety, when you have depression, you have all kinds of intrusive thoughts, you will not be comfortable going ahead and talking with you anyone. And moreover, you became so invested that your sense of self was connected to that, and now you disconnected yourself from that, so you will lose the sense of self. That is the most damaging thing that happens after spiritual abuse. So you do need to be in therapy. Try to go to a counselor or a therapist and share what you're going through. But then again, there is a problem. You must not associate with those who are not a part of the community. If you are from a toxic cult, they say you must not read books, outside books. You must not associate it with outside people. You must not watch content that is not different from scriptures. So again, you will have this debilitating, you will have all kinds of very difficult emotions. So only someone who is trained in dealing with trauma. One thing I want to tell you, if you are going through spiritual abuse, you are going through severe trauma, and you will not be able to handle all this by your own, and you need to be in therapy. So please go ahead and seek therapy and try to buy books on it, because if you read books on spiritual abuse, you will feel validated with whatever happens to you, and which will reduce your cognitive dissonance. And all kinds of free resources you can read and try to reconnect with people. I know you will feel a lot of self-doubt while trying to connect with people outside of your community, because you were always told it's not okay, it's not good for your spiritual life. But right now, focus on your mental health, because you cannot do spiritual things, or you cannot get spiritually elevated while having a bad mental health. Bhagavad Gita, it says that if you are in tamogun, you cannot do all these things. So having mental health issue puts you in tamogun. So first come out of it, get mentally healthy, then you can, after that you can do everything. And you do not need a certain group of people to to love God or to get God's love. God's love is unconditional. You don't need to perform a certain way to have a worth to Krishna. You already have worth to Krishna or to Jesus or to Allah. You already have a worth. You do not need to perform a certain way, and you definitely do not need to associate with a certain group of people who are the reason why you now get triggered with everything that used to bring you pleasure and that used to bring you near to the God. You do not need them. And if you connect with the mental health professional, they will help you figure out these thoughts and try to educate yourself on spiritual abuse. Read everything you can, watch everything you can. And then you will gradually start to feel better, and you will gradually get the autonomy, and you will start to make your own decisions, and you can reconnect with, and you can get back your faith that you have lost in humanity as well as in God and in your faith system.
Thank you for all of that. I love how when I ask a question, you give us a very full answer. It's wonderful, and I really appreciate your knowledge and your expertise in this particular issue. When you were talking, I was thinking about narcissistic abuse in religious and spiritual organizations, and I've made an assumption. It might be true, it might not be true, that narcissistic abuse happens everywhere. However, it's more prevalent in religious groups where there's a strong teaching about surrender and submission, and groups that you need to cut off from the world. The world is bad, have nothing to do with the world. So the word we would use, which doesn't, it's not always a good word, which is fringe groups, groups on the edge of society. So it's groups maybe kind of in Eastern spirituality where you have to surrender to the guru. And I was just thinking of, I can't remember in Sastra where, in scripture where it is, but there's certainly a reference to we need to be more humble than a blade of grass.
Hmm.
And that kind of some people would say, well, you need to be super submissive. You need to go along with everything, and you need to give in to everything. And I've had a number of heated conversations with devotees in the past to say, yes, but that doesn't mean that people can walk all over you. That doesn't mean that you can put up with abuse. It's not acceptable. Be humble, yeah, but don't let people abuse you.
Not just in scriptures, but everywhere. I'll tell you one thing very important today. There are a lot of quotes, motivational quotes, lots of verses in the scriptures that I believe were meant for narcissistic people to understand and follow. But what is happening is that narcissistic people want non-narcissistic people, other people to follow it so that narcissistic people can avoid accountability. They can do whatever they want to, and other people can keep forgiving them. This Sikshastakam shlok that you talked about, the being lower, being more lower than blade of grass. Actually, it was meant all kinds of things that you should be tolerant and you should be humble. It is, I believe, I personally believe that these things were said because God knew that there will be narcissistic people, and he wanted narcissistic people to understand this so that they will not abuse and they will not cause trauma and they will not cause chaos in the society. What is happening is that narcissistic people are holding on to these things and they are preaching and forcing these things to people that they are abusing or that they want to abuse. This is the problem. Now, for example, there is this I mean, all kinds of, no, not just scriptures, but apart from scriptures, everywhere. I think these things were meant for narcissistic people. But what is happening in society is that narcissistic people are forcing this onto others, on the other people that they want to abuse. So, if you remember Mahabharat, if you have seen Mahabharat, I have not personally met a person or a family who had more problems than Pandavas had. They have had so much miseries in their life, all their lives. But Krishna never tried to shame them, make them feel guilty or ashamed, or remind them of their karma, or tell them to go ahead and tolerate all that. When just before this Yuddha, the Kurukshetra war, Arjun was ready to tolerate whatever they were doing to them. The Kauravas, whatever they were doing to Pandavas, Arjun was ready. Yudhishthira was ready. Pandavas were ready to tolerate everything. But Krishna told them to fight. Krishna does not says that you keep on getting all kinds of abuse and trauma from everyone. You have right to stand up for yourself, and we have seen that so many times. When Rukmini, she was getting married to the person she did not wanted, he went ahead and helped her. He helped Draupadi. He saved her from getting married to a wrong person. He so many times helped Pandavas. He would have, even Pandavas wanted to surrender and be humble and go to, they wanted to go to forest and just give up everything to Kauravas. But Krishna did not approve of it. He did not say that you should be humble and go ahead and chant a little more and pray for their spiritual growth, and they will become better. No, he didn't said that. He never said that. He himself said that you should go and fight, and he fought. So scriptures don't say that. The problem is that narcissistic people weaponize it. Yes, of course, it says that you should be humble. Then, one more thing: this law of karma. Why scriptures have this law of karma? So that if I read scripture, I should be able to make sense of what is happening to me, my miseries, and I will take care of my behavior so that I do not do more bad karmas. But what is happening in the society is that narcissistic people are using this knowledge to remind their victims or victims of other narcissistic people that they are friends with, so that they will keep quiet and they will not stand up for themselves. So this is happening. Law of karma, or these teachings of scriptures that you should be humble, these are meant for people who are actually not humble, who are perpetrating abuse on others, who are exploiting others. But what is happening in society is that these people are holding high positions. They are using that knowledge and trying to shut these people down who they are abusing, they are exploiting, they are manipulating. This is why sometimes we don't want people who have been abused. We must never go and tell them that you are going through this because of your karma. This is what not this for this knowledge was not there in the scriptures for showing this behavior to someone who is going through a misery. Krishna didn't do that to Pandavas, but he always took care of his own karmas. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that I do not have any duties, but still I perform duties because I know that people are watching me. And if I do not live a life in an ideal way, if I go astray, people will follow me and they will also go, and then this will ruin the society. That's why I live a life in the right way, in which everyone should live. So all this knowledge in the scripture, it was meant so that we would read and become better people, not so that we will, okay, I got this information of karma and people should be humble. Now I will weaponize it against people that I am abusing, exploiting, manipulating, and I want to use, so that they will always keep quiet and I can do whatever I want to. This is what is happening in society.
I can certainly feel your passion and your enthusiasm and your dedication to this particular topic. I know why you've done, a master's degree, is it, in kind of psychology and counselling, and I know why you study this because I can certainly feel your dedication to the topic. Can you, just before we finish, because I'm conscious it's getting quite late where you are, can you tell us a bit about your book? Is your book out now, or is it coming out soon?
Okay, one of my book is out. It's about narcissistic abuse in intimate relationships. The second book that I'm writing right now, it's about spiritual abuse. It's basically, I wrote this book because since I associated with my community, I had been trying to motivate people to become spiritual, get this lifestyle, because it's better. Of course, it's better when you read scriptures, you know what's right, what's wrong, and you are able to live life in a better way, in a more moral way. It strengthens your moral compass and you become a better person. And this empathy and all, you get to know a lot about everything that helps you lead a better life. So I have tried to motivate a lot of people so that they would also join my community or any other community and become spiritual. But when I observed spiritual abuse going through in my community, other communities also, when I read about this thing, I have read a lot of tons of articles on this issue, and I know this is a very serious issue. And spirituality is a very important thing that everyone should have. But the problem is that some people, they are, unfortunately, when they go and join a community and they try to grow spiritually, instead of spiritual growth, spiritual abuse happens, and it takes away everything. As I told you, the spiritual abuse takes away everything. Even once you have been spiritually abused, you don't know who you are. you lose sense of self when you're spiritual abuse. So being a part of my community, and since I've motivated people to become part of this one, my community or any other community, I feel a sense of responsibility that now, since I know that there is a loophole, that there are narcissistic people, toxic people, there are toxic patterns in communities, something should be done about keeping people safe in it. So just by creating contents, I thought it would not be sufficient, so I must write a book that I can literally go and give to people, at least to those that who are for whom I am responsible, because I have connected them to the community, and any other person who are going through abuse, been through abuse, because spiritual abuse leaves you with so much guilt and confusion and self doubt. You don't understand what to do next. Sometimes some people lose their faith, not just in community but in God also. They become aversive to God or any spiritual thing, and that's very dangerous thing, I think, because we have been given this human form of body so that we can do self-realization. We can go back to God's kingdom and connect with yourself also with God. This is our last chance according to our scriptures, in those scriptures. And if someone gets spiritually abused and they become aversive to God, that's the most dangerous thing that can happen, because I have been observing people, and I can see that there are some people in this world who have no one actually except for God. And if imagine if abuse happened to those kind of people, then they have no one at all now. They had only God, and now God is
Mm.
also not there because they have developed this aversion, this hatred. Even God becomes a trigger to them. I do not want this to happen to anyone. And I really feel I have observed this happening to people, but I cannot do anything. And it's very painful to have so much awareness and not having any power to do anything about it, because even the people who are going through it will not listen to you. They will think that I'm trying to um, take them to wrong path, and they should continue to get abused in that system and continue with all that, even though it's taking toll on their mental health and relationships and everything. But they will not listen to me. So I feel very great. It's a great responsibility. I must do something because I have awareness. I understand everything about it. I have read so much about it, watched so much content on it, by and not just blogs, but I have read scholarly articles, research papers, and everything. And it's a very, very serious issue currently in the society, and people need to be aware of it. So that is why I'm writing this book on spiritual abuse. It's a book in which people will get to know what spiritual abuse it, where does this term comes from, how does it manifests in communities or in families. In some families also, there is one person who is very religious and will abuse the rest of them. The narcissistic people, when they become religious, they become very highly abusive. Now spirituality becomes one more tool that they use for abuse and manipulation. And now they have this self-righteousness, and they become this thing, they have become something special, and they've got this shortcut to become spiritually elevated. Now they do all this, they perpetrate all that abuse with more confidence, because now nobody can say anything to any of them. If family members try to go ahead and share the story of abuse with anyone, who would believe them? They are such great saints, they are preaching, and they are uh, all kinds of spiritual things they are doing, and they are bringing followers, and they are becoming gurus and all. Who will believe them? So in this book, the pattern of abusive behavior in families and in communities, and what are the other things. For example, spiritually abusive communities also enable domestic abuse and child abuse. I have also talked about that. I have talked about one very important thing, that why is it that same community or same toxic person in social community, spiritual community, why different people have different perceptions? It's because of their background. People who are coming from dysfunctional families, or those from functional families, they will have different perspective on the spiritual abuse or on a spiritually abusive person, because they have different kinds of faith, they have different kinds of worldview, they have different filters through which they see the world. So I've discussed, dedicated an entire chapter to dysfunctional families and how it's very why people who are coming from dysfunctional families or abusive relationships are very highly vulnerable to cultic environments. They easily get attached to them. Why does it happens? And how they keep they stay attached with them, and what are the aftermaths of the spiritual abuse on different kind of people. And after that, I've discussed what can be done about it, if whether to leave or to stay, how to measure the pros and cons, and after you leave, the difficulties that people face while living the community, or if the abuse is happening inside the family, how to leave that family member, and after that, how to regain faith. So basically, this book, the main purpose of writing this book is how to gain your faith once again on humanity, on your faith system or religion, and especially on God. That is my main motivation. If someone has lost faith on God, I want to give them that faith back. That is the main motivation of writing this book.
That is very encouraging because a lot of devotees, people of many religions and spiritual groups, they may leave an organization because of abuse, and completely turn their backs away from God, and they lose their faith completely, and that doesn't have to be the case. It's not God doing the abuse, it's these narcissistic people, and I often hear sad stories within the Hare Krishna movement that someone's had, I don't know, a bad experience in ISKCON, so they've left uh, Krishna consciousness completely. And I explained to them that actually there's lots of different groups and different projects and different initiatives that you can get involved with, or actually you don't have to get involved with any of them. Like you've said, you can practice your spiritual life at home. You can have, in the tradition that we follow, you can have your deities at home, you can do your japa at home, you can offer your food to God and it becomes prasadam at home. You can listen to lectures online at home. You can live a sattvic life on your own if you really want to.
Yeah.
It's so simple. I'm conscious of the time and it's very late where you are. And I'm really pleased that we've recorded this podcast. I'm very grateful to you for your time.
Thank
Um,
you.
what I'm going to do with this recording, I'm going to put both on Facebook and YouTube links to your websites, YouTube channel, and people can contact you, can't they, through those means? Because I'm sure that people will get in touch. A lot of people that actually follow the Hare Krishna project are people, not all of them, but some of them have experienced abuse within the Hare Krishna movement, and they are seeking support and help and advice. And every now and then people contact me because of things that have happened to them. I mean, I'm happy to listen, but I'm not an expert in any stretch of the imagination. So I'm pleased that we have an expert on the show this week that can help them with some of these really deep emotional issues. So Anu, I'm going to say goodbye to people at home, but if you just stay on the line, stay in the Zoom room, we can have a very brief debrief after. So I'm incredibly grateful to Anu for being our 152nd guest on the Hare Krishna Project podcast. It's been great to have her on the show, to hear her story, to hear her dedication to this particular issue of how to spot a narcissist and how to deal with narcissistic abuse in spiritual organizations. Because I'm sure there's a lot of you, or a number of you, listening or watching this podcast would have been the victim of that. And there are people like Anu that can help you and give you advice and support. So do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching this podcast on Facebook, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. And as always, I always love to receive constructive feedback. You are allowed to disagree with the guest or even disagree with me. Some of you do, which is fine. It doesn't bother me. But please do provide constructive feedback. Okay, until next week, I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.